Hello everyone, I am here with all the beautiful beloved hides to say thank you for watching these videos. I hope they've been helpful and silly and fun. I hope you're learning. This is just a shout out to invite you to come over to Patreon, something I've been working on for a while now in getting over my resistance to technology. By the time this video is on YouTube, my Patreon should be live. We're starting out very simple at first, but if you've been benefiting from these videos, if you're learning, if you enjoy them, head on over there. You can become a patron if you like. You don't have to. I'm still going to be putting videos for free online every month. But if you do join Patreon and support this work for a couple dollars a month, that's going to enable me to actually do this. In the absence of in-person classes all this year and in the future, I have this desire to put a lot of the information that's normally in my hands-on classes of small groups to kind of bring it gradually more online. And if you decide that you want more, if you like the stuff and you want more, you can become a higher member and get more videos each month that are a little more detailed, a little more like nuanced look into whatever projects I'm working on and some of the information, especially tanning related, that is in my book or that I would be publishing. I'm not necessarily just creating a whole bunch of free materials all the time. So head on over, check it out. I'm starting simple. I'll be adding to it as I learn and as time goes by. So in the future, hopefully there'll be more blog articles of conclusions of projects, more photography, and at some point I'm hoping to do like a Q&A, an online like tanning support group, kind of to see if I can move some of the in-person tanning apprenticeship classes that I do kind of to an online type of format where we can do like live Q&A check-ins once a month or something and get everybody's questions answered. So that could be in the future if I can figure that stuff out. So go over there, check it out, patreon.com/stormsofdaylight. That info will be in the description. This work would be impossible for me to do. The hours and the energy, particularly the computer hours that go into putting all this stuff online and putting video files together, I will not be able to do it without support. So if you've enjoyed my classes before in person and you want more online stuff, or you're just finding these videos, check it out. Thanks for watching. Spread the word and enjoy this next video. Bye. Hello, everyone. So today I have a list. We're gonna do some myth busting about vegetable tanning. This is a myth busting video. So I will just say I have been experimenting with video these past couple weeks and trying to figure out Patreon really for the past couple of years, and I'm making a big push right now, realizing that this year, in the absence of all my normal in-person classes, I gotta figure this stuff out, and it's fun. But I will just say, I know these videos aren't super high quality. I don't have fancy equipment. It's fine. We're getting the point across. We're getting the good info across. And yeah, in the future, I have wanted to try to do video, especially tanning classes, for a long time. I think there's something that would be really high quality and great, and would be a big investment in the future for me to, even if I hire my brother, who's a film guy, to do the filming and the editing. I mean, that's, even on my part, teaching and the setup, I mean, that's weeks and weeks of work and a lot of financial investment in that for getting that started. So we're keeping it simple for now, simple and good. You see there, I already learned how to splice two videos together. Advancing. Okay, So we're going to go by this list today, bust up some myths about vegetable tanning, which are just a pain in the butt. I'm going to bust through them. And I'm doing all this assuming you already know what vegetable tanning is, already have at least some idea. I'll probably do a little classroom video down the road that's just kind of like, what are the basic different kinds of tanning and their names, and why are they called that, and what are the ingredients that are used. We're not going to do that right now. So this is for those who already have some idea about vegetable tanning. And, I'm just going to say that I feel passionate about busting these myths because I have busted my butt learning them. And when I was learning vegetable tanning, I really didn't have anyone to teach me. I really didn't have books or teachers or any really good resources at all. And, just in tanning in general, all types of tanning, including, from skinning the animal all the way to garment making and the plant harvesting. I mean, I'm just gonna tell you, like, I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours just with my hands and my brain on this stuff and just oodles of hides, and clearly I still have 25,000 lifetimes worth to learn about hides, so it's never gonna happen in this lifetime, and I don't think any one person could hold that. And as I've mentioned before in other videos, like, to me, natural tanning is a Pandora's box. It is very multifaceted. It's very confusing. This art form is a trickster. Don't expect to be able to get up inside and around every corner of it and to see it all in the bright daylight. It's not. It's alchemy. It's going to bite your butt every time. Still, we're going to break apart some ideas that aren't so good out there. And yes, it is this cold here today. Okay, we're gonna go on this list, okay? So, number one, we've talked about this before. Number one, this myth that vegetable tanning creates stiff, tough leather, and brain tanning creates fluffy, soft, lightweight leather. Okay, so yes, in general, yes. Okay, if I have all these beautiful hides here to show you guys today. I don't know if you guys can even see. Piles and piles. That's actually embarrassingly a very small peppering. I just pulled out like some because they're going to be useful today. It's actually embarrassing like how many bags of hides I keep on my person. Teacher problems. Okay, so in general, back up. If we have a white-tailed deer, which is what I work with pretty much the most. So if we have a white-tailed deer hide, vegetable tanned, meaning tanned with plant tannins, we come out, this is a stereotypical vegetable tanned deer leather, okay? It's dark colored, it's shiny on one side. It is, it is tough, it is heavy. It's very supple, and I'll make another video down the road about getting those leathers supple. You should all have supple leathers. On the back side, this is heavy duty leather. Yes, it is, okay? You can hear the noise. Okay, same species of animal, relatively similar sized hide, brain tan buckskin style, okay? Yes, it's so different, okay? Yes, it's very lightweight, it's buttery soft. I can crumple up the whole thing into this little tiny ball. It feels like heaven, okay? So yes, in general, yes. Like, this is obvious, right? That a standard way of vegetable tanning a deer hide does make it heavier, stiffer, thicker, more robust leather. And the brain tan buckskin style makes much more lightweight, super supple, soft leather. Okay, so that's a dramatic difference. But overall, that's still a myth because there's so much diversity in skins, in different species of animals, in different kinds of plants you can tan with, that it is a myth that vegetable tanning creates tough, robust leather and brain tanning creates supple leather. And I've shown this in videos before, but I'll show it again, right? And I think my, all right, so some good examples. I'm always showing the rabbit furs, right? And I have probably tanned no greater amount of any single species of animal than I have domestic rabbit furs. Like, I've been in mountains of these guys, so I know them quite well, probably better than any other animal. Okay, so again, once again, the rabbit fur garment. You can see this rabbit fur making up the top of it here. It's as supple and it's almost buckskin, honestly. I mean, it's so soft. It's so lightweight. I mean, it's suede-like. Very, very soft. And this is vegetable tanned, okay? And even some of the darker ones, the color doesn't make a difference. I mean, some of these furs are so thin, it's just ridiculous how soft they are, right? Again, so like, again, this whole garment, it's just a soft, fluffy ball. If you can, I feel like really this is like the closest vegetable tan can get to buckskin, right? Which it's never going to be buckskin, but it's on its way, okay? And this bag I mentioned last time, brain tanned raccoon, tanned 3 times, softened 3 times. This is pretty tough, thick leather, right? Not supple and floppy and suede-like. Pretty heavy-duty stuff because it's a raccoon, okay? Has to do with the species of animal, the thickness of the skin, and just a million other factors, okay? I mean, here's an old raccoon hood. This thing's kind of crazy. Vegetable tanned. Two different hides, so they're 2 different colors you can see here. Actually quite floppy, quite nice. Not as floppy as the rabbits by any stretch of the imagination, but actually much floppier and more supple than the brain tanned raccoon bag. Okay. So, you know, beyond deer and all the other animals, so much variation. So much. Okay, and here's that suede, grain off, white-tailed deer bag I mentioned in another video. It was a super thin-skinned deer. It's crazy supple, right? Like, this is a whole deer hide balled up into a little ball, right? This is definitely not stiff, tough leather, right? It's so thin. It's ridiculously thin. One more. It's a cute little bag, cute little pouch. Really pretty stitching. And this is possum leather. This is vegetable tanned, grain on possum leather. Show you kind of what it's like. Very thin. Definitely not like buckskin. It's sort of tight leather, but very supple, right? Very thin, very magical. Okay. So just sum up, it's just way too simplistic, to say tough leather versus fluffy leather. It's just not the case. It's just not true. Okay, so myth number 2 is that vegetable tanning, which is also sometimes called tannin tanning or bark tanning, that vegetable tanning stains white fur, that it's always going to make a dark colored leather and stain your fur. Therefore, it's not good for fur tanning. Wrong! So wrong! So wrong! Okay? Flat out wrong. Yeah, just like the rabbits. Okay? So all these hides you see here, I mean, some of them are very dark brown, some of them extremely dark brown. Some of them, the leather is a very light beige. Looks a lot like smoked buckskin. Okay, and those, I never turned this garment inside out on that last video. I shall. It's a real treat. Here's the garment turned inside out. So wonderful. Okay, white fur. Here's the back. Oh, it's just so good. So good. Okay, so what we have here is pretty much pure white fur. And that's the leather that is beige colored. We get pretty much pure white fur. Okay. Even again, the darker colored ones, like my hat here, a darker colored tannin. This was knocking back the white fur to like an off-white, a very nice, attractive off-white. Okay, so pure white, essentially pure white, a natural white, and off-white. And yes, sometimes tannins can stain the fur. Okay. There's way too many hides around here. Okay. Look at this guy. I love this guy. Here's a possum, hair on. Dark leather, dark leather. Pretty nice and supple. Very lightweight. Dark leather. Look at that hair. It's orange. It is orange. I call this one the leopard of Appalachia. Okay. Whereas here's a possum. Same deal. Also brown leather, but not as dark. Supple-ish. Supple-ish. And pretty much still the natural white fur. Okay, so this was tanned with sumac leaves when they're red. I think that looks like it. This was tanned with sumac and then with black walnut husks. So the black walnut stained the white fur orange. And I've had that happen on other animals too. Orange! Okay, so yes, tannins can stain fur. Particularly, just particular plants, like black walnut certainly does. Sumac can make an unattractive beige. Sometimes it can make an attractive beige, sometimes an unattractive beige. And there are other plants that can stain hair, like corn yellow and weird colors like that. And that's just where you get into like all the magic of each individual tanning plant. They all have different properties. And there are a few tanning plants that I have come to use here in the Southeast that are so light colored that they make that ultra light beige, leather, and you can keep white fur pure white. So you can even see here, this one, pure white. This one next to it, right here, will have brown leather on the back. And it is stained just a wee bit, just knocked back. You can see the difference there between pure white and right here, off-white. It's very nice. Okay, so that myth is incorrect. It just depends on which plant you use and which part of the plant. Some tannins are very dark colored, some are very light colored. Okay, so you can make pretty light beige leather. Okay, other major myth is that vegetable tanning, aka bark tanning, is all about using bark. Bark, 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 bark. You tan hides in bark. That's the best way to tan. It makes the best leather. It's the fastest. It's the way you're supposed to. All of these ideas. They are so wrong. They're wrong. Okay? People think it's obnoxious, perhaps. But the reason I always use the term vegetable tanning rather than bark tanning, I don't use the word bark tanning, because this method is not limited to bark. This method is using tannins, right, which is the phytochemical. Actually, many, many different types of phytochemicals, many different types of tannins in plant tissues. So it's a chemical, okay? It could be in the bark of the plant or tree. It could be in the leaves. It could be in the nut husks, like with black walnut. It could be in the root bark. It could even be in the seed. It could be in any part of the plant. It doesn't matter as long as it is very, very tannic. Okay, so let us not forget, right? I mean, I'm here in the eastern forests of North America. Okay, let us not forget that all the eastern forests, all of them, nearly every single tree of the ancient so-called virgin forests of this part of the continent were logged. Okay, when Europeans and colonists came over here, and thus then eventually the timber industry, to send timber back to Europe, which was in great demand, logged pretty much every single tree in these massive great forests. Okay, and yes, a lot of that was the timber industry seeking wood. Let us not forget, right, that the tanning industry, the large-scale tanning industry, would have had just as much of a hand in that as the timber industry in seeking of oak bark and hemlock bark. And I think chestnut bark too was used. Not totally sure about that. Gonna have to look that one up again. Okay, that is an ugly history. That is ugly, especially if you have met old growth trees. I mean, the handfuls of old growth trees that I've met in the eastern forests, you know, it is like meeting a great grandmother or a great grandfather, right? Like, I'm gonna cry, right? And, you know, I was not raised in a culture that taught me what an old tree was. You know, we think that in our culture, like a tree that's this big around, even if it's a tree we can just get our arms around, like, oh, that's an old tree, right? And I had never met a truly old tree, a tree that actually has gone into maturity, right? That maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people can stand around to get their arms around it, right? A tree that looks, you know, a tulip poplar tree that's old growth. It doesn't even look like a tulip poplar. Like, the bark completely changes. They're fat trees, tall but with like squatty canopies. They look like mythical creatures, okay? Right? So that's honestly like, it's like living in a culture where you never met any human beings that were over the age of 40, right? If you were just raised to believe that, like, oh, humans just live to about the age of 40 and then they're old and they die, right? If you had never met a person in their 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s or 90s, how that would change your whole perception of life and humanity and wisdom and maturity, right? So, like, we have been robbed. I'm gonna cry again. Like, we've been robbed of some of our greatest elders, the trees, okay, our greatest teachers. For bark, okay, so tanning has a massively ugly history, right? And using enormous amounts of bark, because you have to harvest bark from living trees, not long dead trees. The bark has to be alive because it has to be phytochemically active. So you have to cut down live trees for the most part to tan with bark, for the most part. That is not a lineage that I want to support and continue, okay? Surely, I use barks. I use things like oak bark, hemlock bark. There's lots of other barks I experiment with, like willows, when it makes sense, right? When a big oak tree is already being cut down because someone needs to build a cabin, or some good oak is cut for firewood, right? When you're living with wood stove in the wintertime. Like, I strip all the firewood, you know? I use all that bark if it's coming down anyway. If it's like a hemlock tree that's already like 90% dead, and a lot of these places the hemlocks have been dying off, you know, I'll sort of cut, you know, even if it's a sapling, cut one like right at the tip at the end of its life. Like I know it's going down. That's something that I will do. But for the most part, I am a huge leaf tanner. I tan with leaves the majority of the time. And that's sumac a lot of the time because it's such an amazing tanning plant. The leaves are very tannic. Sumac bark is not very tannic, right? So it's not that barks are always tannic and leaves are not. Every plant is different. On an oak tree, oak bark of pretty much every species of oak that I've encountered, quite tannic. Oak leaves, if you chew on them, not so tannic. They're not worth your while for tanning hides with. They're not worth it. Trust me. It's the first thing I tried. Sumac, most species of sumac have very tannic leaves. Sumac bark, not tannic. You know, like black walnut. Leaves, quite tannic. Nut husks, quite tannic. The bark, though, has very strong tasting chemicals in it. Some of the other medicines that are very strong tasting of that plant. The bark lacks the tannins. Okay, so it's very individual. But there are many, 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 many other species of leaves that I use in my tanning practice, and I'm constantly experimenting with more. And you know, the benefit of using leaves is that you can go along a hedgerow, or like along a roadside, or the edge of a farm, any edge, right, where there's sumac and blackberry and sweet gum saplings and persimmon saplings, like all these very, very tannic, fast-growing, opportunistic shrubs. You could essentially just like prune them all back, get a huge mass of leaves. What in our culture is normally waste. Like all that is usually just mowed and cut back and left because it's a nuisance, which is dumb. Okay, but all that good stuff is beautiful tanning material. So you can harvest enormous amounts, and leaves regenerate much more quickly on an edge than bark would regenerate for an entire new tree to have to grow. Okay, so it's very ecologically sensible given the way ecosystems have changed today. Okay, given the way ecosystems have changed today, and given the massive population change of humans that's now outrageous. Okay, methods can change as methods need change as conditions change. Okay, so it's not true that vegetable tanning is all about bark. It's also not true that tanning with bark makes better leather than tanning with leaves. It's complete baloney. All of it is baloney. It really is. And it's not that bark is more tannic than certain leaves. Certain leaves are way more tannic than certain barks. It's just wrong. And it's a whole beautiful field. It's something I spend a lot of my time experimenting with, writing about. You know, it's about relationship. Every single plant, you know, forming a relationship with every tanning plant. Okay, so myth number 1, myth number 2, myth number 3. Another weird myth is that like bark tanning, vegetable tanning makes like waterproof leather for making garments that are waterproof. I have never seen or felt waterproof vegetable tanned leather. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. There are some really esoteric, magical, ancient traditions of vegetable tanning in different parts of the world. Particularly, I think Russia, where they're using like different resins and like magical stuff. I'm sure like different mixtures of tallows and resins. Like you probably could come up with a leather that is quite water resistant. But in general, I'm talking about just basic vegetable tanning. No, it's not waterproof. And it's only slightly water resistant. And it has nothing to do with vegetable tanning per se. It has to do with the grain layer of the skin. Okay. So this vegetable tanned deer hide, a white-tailed deer, has had the grain layer scraped off. Then it was vegetable tanned. We call that suede. That's what we call suede. So it's fuzzy on both sides. It has that kind of rough texture on the inside and on the outside of the hide. If you drop this in water, like, no, it's just going to get soaking wet, just like buckskin. It's not water resistant. A big vegetable tanned deer hide that still has the grain on. Okay, this shiny, slick layer called the grain. Very different from the membrane side. Like this feels like suede. This does not. So grain, especially once it's oiled, like yes, it does have some slight water resistance. If I pour water on this, I don't even know that I want to do that. Here's my drinking water. Like, yeah, it trickles off, right? It doesn't soak in right away. It kind of like trickles off. But if I saturate this whole thing in a bucket of water, like yes, it's gonna completely saturate and get soaked. But if water is only hitting the grain side, like yes, it will take a lot longer for the water to penetrate all the way in there. So like perhaps water resistant clothing and gear, yes. Certainly not waterproof. But I, you know, like in the summertime, I don't wear shoes if I don't have to, 90% of the time. When I do have to, like I wear little leather, I've been wearing little leather flats for like over 10 years now, or more, 12 years. It's just the only thing that's comfortable for me. And I used to buy them from like Nepal and India, and then thank God, like fair trade came about, and actually like they were more expensive, and also I didn't like them as much, so I started making them in that similar style for my own leathers. So this is a pair that's several years old. I've needed a new pair for a while, but these are great. So they're like thin, right? This is thin deer skin, which like molds to your foot. It's just like, oh, so good. Thin soles, so it's like wearing nothing almost. So this is vegetable tanned, grain on. It's actually sumac and blackberry deer hide. No barks in this. Beautiful. I don't wear my leather shoes in the rain when it's wet. I just don't. Okay? It's an enormous labor. Like to tan these hides naturally, for me to make my shoes, I mean, they're priceless. To me, they're worth $1 million. Even though they wear through quickly in a few years, I make a new pair. But if I wear these in the rain or even in really thick dew, they're just going to disintegrate so much more quickly. It's just not worth it. I just don't do it. If it's raining, I just take my shoes off and stick them in my bag. Even if I have to run into a store, I'll just like slip my shoes off, run to the run to the door of the store, get under cover, slip my shoes back on to go indoors where I have to wear them, right? So I don't wear these in wet weather. I just don't. They would just lose their shape much more quickly and wear out so much more quickly. I mean, I've done it. It's not worth it. So I still don't get this stuff wet as much as I possibly can. Okay, next myth. I don't know, here's a myth I've heard over the years, is that you need to like oil leather with like very special conditioners and oils, like that if you just were to just rub like a pure oil on there of some kind, like olive oil or lard, that like the leather becomes weak and tears, that it's just not good. I don't know where that stuff comes from. Well, it's got to come from commercial leather industry. It does not apply to anything that I have ever experienced. Ever. I'm going to make a new video. We're getting kind of long here.